I helped my best friend pursue his dream, but apparently his dream was sipping margaritas in the Bahamas. I stared at my phone screen, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the Instagram story for the third time. There was my best friend of 15 years, lounging in a bamboo cabana with crystal blue water stretching endlessly behind him. A Mai Tai sat perfectly positioned next to his designer sunglasses. The caption read, "Living the dream in the Bahamas. Sometimes you just have to treat yourself." My bank account showed $127.43. 3 weeks earlier, I had wired him every single dollar of my life savings, $43,000. Money I'd scraped together working double shifts at the warehouse, skipping meals, driving a car held together with duct tape and prayers. All of it gone because I believed in his vision, because I believed in him. Investment meeting in Singapore, he'd told me just yesterday over the phone. His voice had that familiar, confident edge that used to make me feel like we could conquer the world together. Big fish are interested, man. This could change everything for us. Us. That word felt like acid in my throat now. I screenshot the Bahamas post before he could delete it. My finger hovered over his contact name. Part of me wanted to call him immediately and demand an explanation. The other part already knew there wasn't one that would make this right. The worst part wasn't even the money, though losing everything hurt like a physical punch to the gut. The worst part was the realization creeping through my mind like poison. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. I opened our text thread from yesterday. His message stared back at me. "Boarding my flight to Singapore now. Wish me luck with the investors. This is it, buddy." Below that, I'd responded with 3 fire emojis and go get them. I felt sick. My phone buzzed with a new notification. Another Instagram story from him. This time, he was at what looked like a resort restaurant, some kind of elaborate seafood platter in front of him that probably cost more than my rent. The timestamp showed it was posted 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago, while I was sitting in my studio apartment eating ramen noodles and checking my email for the 15th time today, hoping for any update about our business. Our business, what a joke. I called my bank, knowing it was pointless, but needing to do something. The automated system cheerfully informed me that my savings account balance was $127.43. The wire transfer from 3 weeks ago showed as completed in neat digital letters that might as well have been my obituary. "Customer service," I said when the robot asked what I needed. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Did you say representative, human, person?" My voice cracked on the last word. After 10 minutes of hold music, a woman named Patricia picked up. She sounded tired, like she'd been dealing with people like me all day. People who'd made terrible financial decisions and wanted someone else to fix them. "How can I help you today?" "I need to reverse a wire transfer. It was fraud." "I understand your concern, sir. Can you provide me with the transaction details?" I rattled off the numbers I'd memorized by now. Patricia's typing echoed through the phone as she pulled up my account. "I see the transaction here. It shows as authorized by you on the 23rd. Can you tell me more about why you believe this was fraudulent?" How could I explain it? That my childhood best friend had looked me in the eye and promised me we were building something together. That he'd shown me fake business plans and made up client lists. That I'd trusted him because trusting him was as automatic as breathing. He lied to me about what the money was for. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir, but if you authorized the transfer yourself, and it wasn't done through identity theft or unauthorized access to your account, so there's nothing you can do. You could file a police report if you believe a crime was committed. We'd need official documentation to investigate further." I hung up before she could finish explaining the process. Police report. Like I was some random victim instead of someone who'd been systematically manipulated by the person I trusted most in the world. My laptop sat open on my tiny kitchen table, still showing the business plan he'd sent me 6 weeks ago. "Revolutionary social media management platform," the header read. "Projected revenue, $2.3 million in year 1. I'd believed every word. The plan looked so professional, with charts and graphs and market analysis that seemed legitimate to my untrained eye. He'd even included testimonials from supposed beta users, real-sounding names with real-sounding companies giving glowing reviews about how the platform had transformed their online presence. All fake, it had to be. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Core Connect Media Solutions, the company name he'd chosen for our venture. Nothing came up except a generic website with stock photos and lorem ipsum text hidden behind fancy design elements. The kind of site you could build in an afternoon if you knew what you were doing. He'd always been good with computers. Another Instagram notification. This time it wasn't from him. It was from someone I didn't recognize, an account with no profile picture and a username that was just random letters and numbers. "Hey, I saw you're connected to Bryce. Are you one of his investors?" My blood went cold. Bryce, that was his name. The friend who was currently living it up in the Bahamas with my life savings. I clicked on the message thread. The account had been created yesterday. "Who is this?" I typed back. The response came within minutes. "Someone who works for him." Well, worked. Past tense as of this morning. "We need to talk." My hands were shaking again as I typed. "About what?" "About how he's been doing this to everyone. You're not the first. You won't be the last unless someone stops him." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I have documentation. Emails, financial records, recorded conversations, but I need to know you're serious about exposing him before I risk everything." I stared at the message for a long time. Outside my window, traffic hummed by in the evening darkness. Normal people going about their normal lives, probably not wondering if their best friend had just destroyed their future with a smile and a handshake. "I'm serious," I typed. "Tell me everything." The response was immediate. "Not over Instagram, too risky. There's a coffee shop called The Daily Grind on 5th Street. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone and bring whatever documentation you have about your investment. Trust me, you're going to want to see what I have to show you." I screenshotted everything before the conversation could disappear. Then I sat back in my chair and tried to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, I thought I was a successful businessman about to hit it big with my best friend. Now I was apparently the latest victim in some kind of elaborate scheme, about to meet a mysterious whistleblower in a coffee shop, like something out of a thriller movie. My phone buzzed one more time. Another Instagram story from the Bahamas. This time Bryce was at what looked like a spa, getting some kind of massage treatment. He looked completely relaxed, like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just ruined mine. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Bryce's face from 15 years ago when we were 12, sitting in his treehouse planning our escape from from Millfield. Back then, our biggest worry was whether Mrs. Peterson would catch us stealing apples from her orchard. Now he'd stolen my entire future. We'd been inseparable since elementary school, two kids from the wrong side of town with big dreams and bigger mouths. While other kids played video games, we drew blueprints for inventions on notebook paper. Flying cars, robot butlers, machines that could turn garbage into gold. Stupid kid stuff, but it felt real when we talked about it together. "We're going to be rich someday," Bryce would say, lying on his back in that old treehouse, staring up at the wooden ceiling we'd covered with magazine cutouts of sports cars and mansions. Rich enough to buy this whole stupid town and turn it into something cool. I believed him then. I believed him last month when he called me at 2 a.m., voice buzzing with excitement about his latest idea. "Listen to this," he'd said, not even bothering with hello. "Social media management platform, but not like the garbage ones out there now. This thing uses artificial intelligence to predict viral content before it goes viral. We're talking about cornering a billion-dollar market." I was sitting in my studio apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and wearing a work shirt that smelled like motor oil and disappointment. The warehouse job paid enough to keep me alive, barely, but every day felt like drowning in slow motion. "Sounds expensive to build," I'd said, though my heart was already racing. This was it. This was our ticket out. That's the beautiful part. I've got connections now, people who understand this space, but I need seed money to get started. Real money, not pocket change. How much real money? 40, maybe 50,000 to start. I know that sounds like a lot, but I've got 43 in savings. The words came out before I could stop them. 3 years of double shifts and skipped meals, all sitting in a savings account earning practically nothing while I watched my life tick by one warehouse shift at a time. "You'd do that?" His voice went soft, the way it used to when we were kids and made those blood brother promises. "You'd really invest in us?" Us. That word had always been magic between us. Of course I would. We're partners, right? We always said we'd make it out of here together. 2 weeks later, I was signing wire transfer forms at the bank. The teller, some kid who couldn't have been older than 22, kept asking if I was sure about sending such a large amount to a business account. "It's my business too," I told him, feeling proud and terrified and hopeful all at once. Bryce had seemed different during those 2 weeks, more polished somehow. He showed up to our planning meetings wearing expensive-looking clothes and carrying a laptop that probably cost more than my car. When I asked about it, he laughed it off. "Fake it till you make it, right? Investors want to see success, not some guy in a warehouse uniform." That should have been my first warning sign, but I was too caught up in the dream to notice. We'd spent hours in coffee shops, sketching out business plans and talking about hiring strategies. He had answers for everything. Market research, competitor analysis, revenue projections that made my head spin with possibilities. It all sounded so professional coming from him. "The beauty of this business model," he'd explained one afternoon, spreading papers across the table like a general planning a campaign, "is that we're not just selling a service. We're selling the future of digital marketing. Companies will pay premium prices because we'll be the only ones who can guarantee viral content." I'd nodded along, trying to understand half of what he was saying. Technology had never been my strong suit, but Bryce had always been the smart one, the one who figured out how to hack the school computers in 8th grade just for fun, the one who built a working robot for the science fair while I was still struggling with basic algebra. "What about the technical side?" I'd asked. "Building the platform, the AI stuff?" "Already handled. I've got a team lined up. Developers, designers, data scientists. Real pros, not some college kids working for pizza money." He'd show me profiles on his laptop, professional headshots, impressive resumes, glowing testimonials. It all looked legitimate to me, though I realize now I wouldn't have known fake credentials if they'd been written in crayon. The day I wired the money, Bryce took me out to celebrate. We went to the nicest restaurant in town, the kind of place where they brought you warm bread and the waiters wore actual ties. He ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than I made in a day. "To us," he'd said, raising his glass. "To finally getting out of this place." "To the future," I'd replied, clinking my glass against his. He'd paid for dinner with a credit card that looked sleek and black, the kind I'd only seen in movies. When I asked about it, he winked. "Business expenses. Gotta start thinking like an entrepreneur now." That night, I'd gone home feeling like my real life was finally beginning. For the first time since high school, I had something to look forward to. Purpose, partnership, the promise that all those childhood dreams weren't just fantasies after all. I'd called my mom to tell her about the investment. She lived 3 states away now, remarried to a guy who sold insurance and drove a sensible sedan. We didn't talk often, but this felt like news worth sharing. "You gave him how much money?" Her voice went sharp the way it used to when I'd come home with scraped knees and torn shirts. "It's an investment, Mom. We're starting a business together." "Honey, you've known Bryce since you were kids. Remember when he convinced you to sell your baseball cards to buy those magic beans from that traveling carnival?" I'd laughed, though it stung a little. "This is different. We're adults now. He's got real business experience, real connections. I hope you're right. I just worry about you sometimes. You've always been too trusting, too trusting." The words echoed in my head now as I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, thinking about those Instagram posts from the Bahamas. Maybe she'd been right all along, but back then, 3 weeks ago, I'd felt sorry for her. Sorry that she couldn't see what I could see. The opportunity, the potential, the chance to finally become someone worth becoming. "Bryce isn't going to screw me over," I'd told her. "He's my best friend. Best friend." I'd said those words with such certainty, like they were a shield that could protect me from any possibility of betrayal. Now they felt like the punchline to a joke I'd been too stupid to understand. The first week after wiring the money, I texted Bryce every day. Just quick check-ins, nothing pushy. "How's the team building going?" Or, "Any updates on the platform development?" His responses started enthusiastic but got shorter each time. "Amazing progress. The developers are blown away by the potential," became "looking good," which became "on track," followed by single thumbs up emojis. By the second week, he wasn't responding to my texts at all. When I finally called him, his voice sounded strained, like I was interrupting something important. "Hey, what's up?" he said. No greeting, no warmth. This wasn't the Bryce who used to call me just to share random thoughts or complain about his day. "Just wondering how things are going with the business. Haven't heard from you in a few days." "Everything's fine. These things take time, you know? Rome wasn't built in a day." There was background noise on his end. Music, maybe voices. It sounded like a party, not a development meeting. "Where are you right now?" "Networking event. You wouldn't understand the technical side anyway." The words hit like a slap. Since when did Bryce talk to me like I I was stupid. We'd grown up together, shared everything, and now suddenly I couldn't understand basic business concepts. I'm a partner in this company, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think I deserve to know what's happening with my investment. Your investment? He laughed, but it wasn't the warm laugh I remembered from our childhood. This one had an edge, like he was amused by something I didn't get. Dude, you're not a partner. You're an investor. There's a difference. The call ended before I could respond. That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying the conversation, trying to figure out what had changed. 2 weeks ago, we were equals, planning our escape from small-town life. We'd talked about sharing an office, maybe getting matching business cards. Now I was just some guy who'd given him money. I texted him an apology, even though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. Sorry if I came across as pushy, just excited about our project. No response. The third week, my rent was due. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck for so long that wiping out my savings left me with nothing to fall back on. My landlord, Mrs. Patterson, had always been understanding about late payments, but this time I had to borrow money from my coworker, Jerome, just to keep my apartment. You sure this business thing is legit? Jerome asked as he handed me $300 in cash. He was a good guy, mid-50s, been working at the warehouse longer than I'd been alive. Because you look like you haven't slept in days. He wasn't wrong. I'd been lying awake every night, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince myself that everything was normal, that startups took time, that Bryce was just busy. It's legit, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. Just waiting for things to get moving. Jerome studied my face for a moment. My brother-in-law got mixed up in one of those pyramid schemes a few years back. Lost everything. Started the same way. Big promises, fancy presentations, then radio silence when it came time to show results. This isn't a pyramid scheme, I said quickly. It's a real business. Software development. But Jerome's words stuck with me. Big promises, fancy presentations, radio silence. It sounded uncomfortably familiar. When I tried calling Bryce to ask about timeline for returns, his phone went straight to voicemail. The outgoing message was new. You've reached the CEO of Core Connect Media Solutions. Please leave a detailed message and I'll get back to you within 48 hours. CEO. Not co-founder, not partner. CEO. I left 3 messages that week. He didn't return any of them. My financial situation was getting desperate. My credit card was maxed out from covering expenses I used to pay with cash. The grocery bill, gas money, the co-pay for a doctor's visit when I got sick. Everything that used to come from my checking account now went on plastic. The interest was already starting to compound. I had to pick up extra shifts at the warehouse, which meant even less sleep and more exhaustion. My supervisor, Randy, pulled me aside after I nearly dropped a forklift load. You doing okay? He asked. You seem distracted lately. How could I explain it? That I'd given my best friend everything I had, and now he was treating me like a stranger? That I was one missed paycheck away from losing my apartment? Just some personal stuff, I said. I'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. I was scared, angry, and starting to feel like an idiot for trusting someone so completely. By week 4, I was desperate enough to show up at his apartment. The building was nicer than I remembered, with a doorman and everything. When I asked for Bryce's apartment, the doorman looked confused. Mr. Bryce moved out about 2 weeks ago, he said. Didn't leave a forwarding address. My stomach dropped. Moved out? Where did he go? Sorry, I can't give out that information, but he seemed to be in a hurry. Movers came on a Tuesday morning, had everything out by noon. I stood on the sidewalk outside his building feeling completely lost. My best friend had taken my money, changed his phone message, moved apartments without telling me, and was apparently too busy being a CEO to return my calls. That's when I started really paying attention to his social media. The posts had been there all along, but I'd been too trusting to really analyze them. Pictures from expensive restaurants with captions like client dinner, closing deals, photos of him in designer clothes with hashtags about entrepreneur life and building the future. But now I looked closer. The restaurant in Tuesday's post had a Michelin star. The jacket he was wearing in Wednesday's selfie was from a brand I'd only seen in magazines. Thursday brought gym selfies from some high-end fitness center that probably cost more per month than I made in a week. Then came Friday's bombshell. Photos of his new car. A BMW that definitely wasn't in his budget a month ago. The caption read, "Nothing says success like upgrading your ride. Hard work pays off. Entrepreneur life. Trach blessed." Each post had dozens of comments from people I didn't recognize, all praising his success and asking for business advice. Teach me your secrets. Living the dream. When can I invest in your company? When I tried commenting on one of his posts, just a simple looking good man, he deleted it within an hour. I screenshotted everything before he could delete more evidence. The expensive dinners, the designer clothes, the luxury gym membership, the new car. When I started adding up what everything must have cost, the numbers made me sick. A quick Google search told me that the restaurant where he'd had his client dinner charged $200 per person for their tasting menu. The fitness center required a $5,000 initiation fee plus monthly dues. The BMW was at least $60,000, even used. Where was all this money coming from? I called him again. This time he answered, but his tone was ice cold. What do you need? Not hey or how's it going? Just straight to business. I need to know what's happening with our business. You moved apartments without telling me, you're not returning my calls, and your social media looks like you're spending money faster than we could possibly be making it. First of all, it's not our business. It's my business. You're an investor, which means you invested money and now you wait for returns. That's how investing works. But we talked about being partners. We talked about a lot of things. Look, I appreciate your support, but I can't have you micromanaging every decision. This is a complex operation with moving parts you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Show me the progress reports, introduce me to the team, let me see what we're building. I don't have time to walk you through basic business concepts. The platform is in development, the team is working around the clock, and everything is proceeding according to plan. Your job is to be patient. My job? What's your job exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're partying and buying expensive stuff while I'm borrowing money to pay rent. The silence stretched out so long I thought he'd hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, colder. You know what your problem is? He said. You think small. You see me investing in my image, networking with the right people, positioning the company for success, and all you can think about is your rent money. That's why you're still working in a warehouse, and I'm building an empire. The words hit every insecurity I'd ever had about being the dumb one, the one who didn't understand business or technology or any of the things that that mattered in the real world, but they also made me angry. I'm not thinking small, I said. I'm thinking about survival. That money was everything I had, and now it's working for you in ways you can't even comprehend. But if you can't handle the stress of being an investor, maybe you should have kept it in your savings account earning 0.5% interest. He hung up. I stared at my phone, shaking with anger and hurt and a growing certainty that something was very wrong. The Bryce I'd known since childhood would never have talked to me like that, would never have dismissed my concerns or made me feel stupid for asking questions about my own money, unless he'd never been the person I thought he was. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and mounting bills. Every time I opened my mailbox, there was another red notice. Late fees on my credit card. A warning from the utility company. My car insurance was due, and I had no idea how I was going to pay it. I started picking up every available overtime shift at the warehouse, working 12-hour days until my back ached and my hands were raw. Even with the extra hours, I was barely breaking even. Meanwhile, Bryce's social media presence was getting more elaborate. Professional photo shoots in expensive suits, videos of him giving business advice to imaginary audiences, posts about disrupting the industry and changing the game. I started screenshotting everything, building a timeline of his spending versus his supposed business activities. The pattern was clear to anyone who bothered to look. He was living like a millionaire while claiming to be building a startup. But the most damning evidence came when I decided to do some research of my own. I spent an entire weekend online reading about startup funding and development timelines and what legitimate businesses were supposed to look like in their first month of operation. What I found made my stomach turn. Real startups had websites with actual content, not just placeholder text. They had development blogs showing progress, team pages with real employee information, beta testing programs with user feedback. They had something to show for their funding besides expensive lifestyle posts on Instagram. CoreConnect Media Solutions had none of that. The website was exactly the same as it had been 6 weeks ago. No updates, no progress reports, no evidence that anyone was actually working on anything. The team page still showed those same professional headshots that now looked suspiciously like stock photos. I reverse searched one of the images and found it on 3 different resume template websites. Same photo, different names, different job titles. The lead developer was also apparently a marketing specialist and a data analyst on other sites. My hands were shaking as I screenshot the evidence. Fake team members, fake testimonials, fake business plan. How had I been so blind? But the worst part wasn't even the fake website. The worst part was realizing that while I'd been worrying about rent money and eating ramen noodles for dinner, Bryce had been living it up like some kind of Silicon Valley hotshot. On my money. I called him one more time, determined to get a straight answer. When he picked up, I could hear restaurant noise in the background again. Clinking glasses, soft jazz, the kind of place where they probably didn't even list prices on the menu. This better be important, he said. I'm in a meeting. I need to see the development progress. Code, wireframes, beta tests, anything that shows the platform actually exists. Excuse me? I've been looking at the website. It's the same as it was 6 weeks ago. No updates, no progress, nothing. And those team members you showed me, their photos are stock images. The background noise faded like he'd stepped outside or moved to a quieter area. Are you seriously questioning my integrity right now? I'm questioning where my money went, because it sure looks like it went to pay for your new car and your fancy dinners. Your money is exactly where it's supposed to be, working. But since you apparently don't trust me to do my job, maybe we need to reevaluate this partnership. What partnership? You just spent the last month telling me I'm not a partner. You know what? You're right. You're not a partner. Partners trust each other. Partners don't interrogate each other like criminals. What you are is an investor who's having second thoughts. My heart was pounding. Are you saying you won't show me any proof that this business actually exists? I'm saying that if you can't handle the uncertainty of early stage investing, maybe you shouldn't have invested in the first place. Maybe you should stick to your warehouse job and your savings account and let the real entrepreneurs handle the big picture. The line went dead. I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and the growing realization that my best friend had just stolen my life savings and was somehow making me feel like the bad guy for asking about it. But I wasn't crazy. Something was wrong here, very wrong, and I was going to prove it. I couldn't sleep that night after the final phone call with Bryce. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his Instagram posts flashing like neon signs, the BMW, the expensive restaurants, the designer clothes, all purchased while I was borrowing money for rent. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. If Bryce wanted to play games, I'd play them better. I started with his social media, but this time I wasn't just looking at the pretty pictures. I was building a timeline. I went back through 2 months of posts, screenshotting everything and noting dates. The pattern was obvious once I laid it out chronologically. The expensive lifestyle had started exactly 1 week after I'd wired him the money. Before that, his posts were normal. Pizza with friends, his old beat-up Honda, selfies in clothes I recognized from high school. Then suddenly designer everything. I opened a spreadsheet and started tracking expenses. Conservative estimates put his spending at over $30,000 in 6 weeks. The BMW alone was probably that much, even if he'd gotten a deal. But I needed more than Instagram posts. I needed real evidence. I remembered Bryce mentioning the name of the office space he'd supposedly rented for the company. We work downtown, he'd said. 24th floor, corner office with a view of the river. When I called their main number, the receptionist was helpful. CoreConnect Media Solutions, let me check our directory. A pause. I'm sorry, I don't see any company by that name in our system. Are you sure about the spelling? I tried variations. CoreConnect Media. Nothing. Is it possible they're using a different business name? I asked. All our tenants are required to register their official business names with us. If they're not in the system, they're not renting space here. Strike one. Next, I called the business registration office for our state. If CoreConnect was a real company, it would have to be registered somewhere. CoreConnect Media Solutions, the clerk repeated back to me. Let me search our database. More typing. I'm not finding anything under that name. When was the business incorporated? About 2 months ago. Nothing recent under that name or any similar variations. Are you sure about the business name and state of incorporation? Strike two. I was starting to see the shape of something ugly, but I needed to be absolutely certain. I spent the next day making more calls. The supposed lead developer whose photo was on the website? When I tracked down the original stock photo, it led to a modeling agency. The same guy was apparently also a construction construction foreman, and a financial advisor on other stock photo sites. The testimonials from supposed beta testers? I plugged some of the quotes into Google and found them scattered across random business websites, word for word. Someone had copy-pasted fake reviews from other companies. Every single thing about CoreConnect Media Solutions was fabricated. But the real breakthrough came when I decided to dig into Bryce's background. If he was running a scam, maybe there were warning signs I'd missed. I started with basic searches, social media accounts I didn't know about, professional profiles, anything that might give me insight into what he'd been doing before our business partnership. That's when I found his LinkedIn profile. It was polished, professional, and completely different from the version he'd shown me 2 months ago. This one listed him as CEO of CoreConnect Media Solutions with 3 years of experience. 3 years. But CoreConnect supposedly started 2 months ago. More interesting were his previous jobs. According to LinkedIn, he'd been a growth consultant at something called Digital Synergy Partners for the past year. Before that, strategic advisor at Next Gen Marketing Solutions. I'd never heard him mention either company. When I searched for Digital Synergy Partners, the website looked suspiciously similar to CoreConnect's. Same template, same placeholder text, same generic stock photos. Next Gen Marketing Solutions didn't exist at all. The domain was for sale. This wasn't Bryce's first rodeo. He'd been running fake companies for at least a year, maybe longer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is this the guy who invested in Bryce's company? My heart stopped. Someone else knew about this. Who is this? I typed back. Someone who used to work for him. Can we talk? Not over text. This was either the break I needed or someone trying to scam me too. I was paranoid enough at this point to consider both possibilities. How do I know you're legitimate? Because I can tell you exactly how much money you gave him and when. I can also tell you about the other investors. Other investors. My blood went cold. Meet me at Central Park Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be wearing a red jacket. Come alone. The next day I arrived at Central Park Coffee 15 minutes early and ordered something I couldn't afford just to have a reason to sit down. My hands were shaking as I checked the time every 30 seconds. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman in a red jacket walked in. She was maybe 25, professional looking, with tired eyes that reminded me of my own lately. You must be Bryce's investor, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I'm Rachel. How did you get my number? Bryce isn't as careful as he thinks he is. He left his phone unlocked during a meeting last week. I saw your text thread. She pulled out a folder thick with papers. Look, I don't have much time. He fired me yesterday, but not before I copied some things he probably doesn't want public. She spread documents across the table. Bank statements, emails, expense reports, invoices. It was like looking at the financial skeleton of a complete lie. CoreConnect doesn't exist, she said simply. It never did. Bryce hired me to play the role of business development manager for meetings with potential investors. He paid me cash, told me it was all legitimate, said we were just trying to get funding for a real company. I stared at the papers. There were wire transfers from multiple people, not just me. 5 different investors, all for amounts between $20,000 and $50,000. How many people did he steal from? That I know of? 6, counting you. But there might be more. She pointed to a bank statement. This is his personal account. Look at the deposits. The numbers made me sick. Over $200,000 in investments over the past 3 months. All of it flowing into his personal checking account, then immediately flowing out to luxury car dealerships, high-end retailers, travel websites.
He's not building anything, Rachel continued. He's just collecting money from people who trust him and spending it on himself. The office space, the development team, the platform, none of it exists.
Why are you telling me this? Because he owes me money too. Promised me a salary and profit sharing once the company was established. I worked for 6 weeks before I realized it was all fake. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages. Yesterday, when I asked about my paycheck, he told me the company was pivoting and my services were no longer needed. The messages were brutal. Bryce dismissing her concerns, making excuses, finally telling her she was too inexperienced to understand business complexities. The same treatment he'd given me. There's more, Rachel said. He's already started working on his next company, something called TechFlow Innovations. Same playbook, same fake website, same stock photo employees. She showed me another folder. TechFlow had the same template as CoreConnect and Digital Synergy Partners. The same testimonials, just with different company names, even some of the same employee photos. He's systematic about it, she explained. Run a fake company for a few months, collect as much money as possible, then shut it down and start a new one. He's done this at least 3 times that I can prove. I thought about all the other investors on those bank statements. People like me who'd trusted someone they shouldn't have. People who were probably lying awake at night wondering what had happened to their money. Do any of the other investors know? I don't think so. He keeps everyone isolated. Tells each person they're his only investor, or at least his primary partner. She pulled out another document. This is his standard investment pitch. Look familiar? It was almost word for word what he'd told me. The revolutionary platform, the AI-powered predictions, the billion-dollar market opportunity. Even the revenue projections were identical. He gave the same exact presentation to everyone, with minor variations. He told one guy it was a social media platform, another that it was e-commerce optimization, someone else that it was marketing automation. But the core pitch was always the same. Give me money now, get rich later. I felt like an idiot. All those hours we'd spent planning our future together, and he'd been reading from a script. What are you going to do with all this? I asked, gesturing at the documents. I'm going to the police, and probably a lawyer, but I wanted to warn the other investors first. She slid a piece of paper across the table. These are their contact details. Bryce kept a spreadsheet with everyone's information. Looking at the names and numbers, I realized how small my loss was compared to some of these people. One person had invested $70,000. Another had put in $120,000. Why haven't they come forward? Same reason you probably didn't until now. Embarrassment. Hope that maybe they were wrong. Bryce is good at making people feel stupid for questioning him. Rachel checked her watch. I have to go. I'm meeting with the other investors this afternoon. She packed up her documents, then paused. For what it's worth, you seem like a decent person. Don't let him make you feel like this is your fault. He's a professional. This is what he does. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, trying to process everything. Bryce wasn't just a friend who'd made bad decisions with my money. He was a career criminal who'd systematically stolen from multiple people. And apparently I was just his latest latest victim. But now I had proof. Real, documented evidence of fraud, forgery, and theft. Bank statements, emails, witness testimony, a clear pattern of criminal behavior. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than helpless anger. I felt ready to fight back. Armed with Rachel's evidence and contact information for the other victims, I spent the next 3 days planning my approach. This wasn't going to be another phone call where Bryce could hang up on me or twist my words around. This time, I wanted witnesses. I reached out to the other investors using the contact list Rachel had given me. Most of them were just as angry and confused as I was. We arranged to meet as a group, and what I learned made my stomach turn. Robert, a retired teacher, had invested his entire pension hoping to secure his wife's medical expenses. Jennifer had used her children's college fund. Mark had taken out a second mortgage on his house. We weren't just random victims. We were people who'd trusted Bryce with everything we had. He told me I was his only investor, Jennifer said during our group video call. Said he was keeping the opportunity small and exclusive. Same here, Mark added. Made it sound like I was getting in on the ground floor of something huge. The lies were identical across all of us. Same pitch, same promises, same fake urgency about getting in before the opportunity disappeared. So what do we do? Robert asked. His voice sounded tired, defeated. We confront him, I said. Together, with evidence. Make him face what he's done to all of us. We agreed to meet at the coffee shop where Bryce used to hold his fake business meetings. I'd seen him post about it on social media, some trendy place downtown where he liked to take photos of himself looking entrepreneurial. I called him that morning, trying to keep my voice normal. Hey, I've been thinking about our last conversation, I said. Maybe I was being too paranoid. Could we meet up and talk? I want to understand the business better. There was a pause. Finally ready to act like a real investor? The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench, but I forced myself to stay calm. Yeah, I want to learn more about how these things work. Fine. Cafe Luna downtown, 2 o'clock, and come with a better attitude this time. Perfect. That was exactly where we'd planned to meet. I arrived early with Robert and Jennifer. Mark was running late, but promised to be there. We sat at a table in the back corner where we could see the entire cafe. At exactly 2 o'clock, Bryce walked in wearing an expensive suit I'd never seen before. He looked around the cafe like he owned the place, then spotted me and walked over with that familiar, confident smile. There's my business partner, he said loudly enough for other tables to hear. Ready to learn how the big leagues work? Actually, I said, I brought some people I'd like you to meet. His smile faltered when he noticed Robert and Jennifer sitting at the table. Who are these people? Fellow investors in Core Connect Media Solutions, I said. You remember Robert, right? The man whose pension you took? And Jennifer, whose kid's college fund you spent on your BMW? The color drained from Bryce's face. He looked around the cafe, suddenly aware that other people might be listening. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, he said quietly, but this isn't appropriate. You're right, I said, pulling out my phone. Let's talk about what's appropriate. I started reading from the bank statements Rachel had given me. March 15th, deposit of $43,000 from my account. Same day, withdrawal of $8,000 for luxury car down payment. March 20th, deposit of $57,000 from Robert's pension fund. Same day, $5,000 spent at designer clothing stores. Stop, Bryce said, looking around nervously. People can hear you. Good, Jennifer said, speaking for the first time. Let them hear. Let them know what kind of person you are. By now, Mark had arrived and was standing behind Bryce. Is this him? Mark asked. This is the guy who stole my house payment? Bryce spun around, realizing he was surrounded. I don't know who you people are, but you know exactly who we are, I interrupted. Robert Wilson, pension teacher from Millfield Elementary. Jennifer Kane, single mother of 2 from Riverside. Mark Patterson, construction worker from downtown. You have files on all of us. You researched our backgrounds before you decided how much you could steal. I pulled out more documents. Want to see your investor research notes? The ones where you wrote down that Robert was desperate for medical money and Jennifer was emotional about her kid's future? Bryce's face went white. Where did you get those? Your former employee, Rachel. You know the one you fired when she asked for her paycheck. She kept copies of everything. That's confidential business information. What business? Robert stood up, his voice shaking with anger. There is no business. There never was. You made it all up to steal our money. People at nearby tables were starting to stare. The barista behind the counter was watching our group with obvious concern. Look, Bryce said, lowering his voice and trying to regain control. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The business is real. It's just taking longer to develop than expected. These things happen in startups. Really? I said. Then explain this. I pulled out printouts of the fake business registrations, the stock photo employees, the recycled testimonials. I spread them across the table like evidence in a courtroom. Core Connect Media Solutions doesn't exist. Digital Synergy Partners didn't exist. Next Gen Marketing Solutions didn't exist. None of your companies have ever existed. Bryce stared at the papers, his mouth opening and closing without sound. And here's the best part, I continued. TechFlow Innovations, your new scam, already up and running with the same fake employees and the same stolen testimonials. Mark picked up one of the printouts. This guy, he said, pointing to a photo. This is supposed to be your head of development? He's a stock photo model, Jennifer added. We found his picture on 10 different websites. Bryce looked around the cafe desperately like he was searching for an escape route. You don't understand how complex this industry is. The development process, the regulatory requirements. Stop lying, I said. We have your bank statements. Every penny we gave you went straight to your personal expenses. Cars, clothes, restaurants, vacations. You didn't spend a single dollar on business development. And the Bahamas trip? Robert asked. While you were telling me my pension was being invested in cutting-edge technology, you were getting massages on a beach. For the first time since I'd known him, Bryce looked genuinely scared. He glanced around the cafe again, then back at our table full of evidence. Fine, he said finally. You want to play hardball? Go ahead. Sue me. See what happens. The same words he'd used on me weeks ago, but this time I was ready for them. We don't need to sue you, I said. We already called the police. His eyes went wide. You what? Fraud investigation unit. They're very interested in your pattern of fake businesses and stolen investor money. Oh, and the IRS. Turns out you haven't been paying taxes on any of the money you stole. You can't. He was stammering now, all his smooth confidence gone. Detective Williams will be here in about 10 minutes, Jennifer said, checking her watch. Rachel is meeting him here with all the financial evidence. As if on cue, the cafe door opened and Rachel walked in, followed by a man in a plain suit who was obviously a police police officer. Bryce saw them and panic flashed across his face. He started backing away from our table. "This is harassment," he said, his voice getting louder. "I'm a legitimate businessman. These people are trying to extort money from me." Several customers were openly staring now. The detective approached our table and showed his badge. "Mr. Bryce, I'm Detective Williams. I'd like to ask you some questions about Core Connect Media Solutions." "I want a lawyer," Bryce said immediately. "That's your right," the detective said calmly. "But I think you should know, we've been investigating reports of investment fraud, and your name has come up multiple times." Bryce looked around the cafe one more time. Every eye in the place was on him. His expensive suit, his confident smile, his entrepreneur persona, all of it crumbling in real time. "You're all making a huge mistake," he said, but his voice was shaking. "When my lawyers get involved—" "Your lawyers?" I interrupted. "The ones you're going to pay with stolen money?" Detective Williams stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning." As they led Bryce toward the door, he turned back to look at our table. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely. No more smooth talking, no more manipulation, no more fake confidence. Just a scared guy who'd been caught. "This isn't over," he said, but we all knew it was. The next 6 months were a blur of legal proceedings, paperwork, and slowly rebuilding my life. Bryce was arrested that day at the cafe. The charges kept piling up. Wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, running fraudulent businesses. When the FBI got involved and started tracing his financial history, they found evidence of at least 12 different fake companies over 3 years. The local news picked up the story. Local man arrested in multi-state investment fraud scheme. Seeing Bryce's mugshot on the evening news felt surreal. This was the same guy who used to steal candy bars with me when we were 10. His expensive lifestyle crumbled fast. The BMW was repossessed within a week. The designer clothes got seized as evidence. His social media accounts, once full of entrepreneur wisdom and luxury photos, went completely silent. Through our lawyer, we learned that Bryce had actually spent even more money than we'd realized. Credit card debt, personal loans, gambling losses. He'd been living way beyond his means even with our stolen money. Most of what he'd taken from us was already gone. The restitution process was complicated. Since Bryce had blown through most of the money, we had to fight for scraps. I got back about 60% of my investment, partly from asset seizures and partly from a victim compensation fund. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to stop the financial bleeding. Robert got most of his pension back through emergency measures from his former school district. Jennifer had to take out loans to replace her kids' college fund, but at least she knew where they stood. Mark lost his house, but found a smaller place he could afford. We all stayed in touch after the trial. Not because we wanted to relive the trauma, but because we'd been through something together that nobody else could understand. We'd all learned the same hard lesson about trust and greed, and how easy it is to fool people who want to believe in something better. Rachel, the former employee who'd blown the whistle, got a job at a legitimate marketing firm. Last I heard, she was doing well and had started a side project helping fraud victims navigate the legal system. As for me, I went back to the warehouse. Same job, same pay, same routine, but something had changed. I wasn't the same person who'd wired away his life savings based on childhood friendship and big dreams. I started small, put $50 a month into a new savings account, read books about investing and business, but real ones this time, not the fantasy novels Bryce had sold me. Took a night class in basic accounting, so I'd never again be impressed by fake spreadsheets and made-up projections. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was accepting that I'd been wrong about someone I'd known for 15 years. All those memories of our friendship, all those plans we'd made as kids, none of it had been real for him. Maybe it never was. I found myself wondering how long he'd been planning to scam me. Was it a recent decision, or had he been looking at me as a potential mark since we reconnected? Did he ever actually care about our friendship, or was I always just another wallet to him? Those questions kept me up at night for months. My mom called me after she saw the news story. "I'm sorry I was right," she said. "I really hoped I was wrong about him." "Yeah," I said, "me too." "Are you okay?" It was a complicated question. Financially, I was slowly recovering. Emotionally, I felt like I'd aged 10 years in 6 months. But I was learning things about myself I'd never known before. "I'm getting there," I told her. "It's weird, I feel stupid for trusting him, but also kind of proud that I fought back." "You should be proud. A lot of people would have just accepted the loss and moved on. Maybe. But I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd let him get away with it. Not just because of my money, but because of Robert and Jennifer and Mark and all the other people he would have hurt next." 6 months after Bryce's arrest, I got a letter from his lawyer. He wanted to meet with me. Not for legal reasons. The criminal case was closed and he was already serving his sentence. This was personal. I almost threw the letter away. What could he possibly have to say that I wanted to hear? But curiosity got the better of me. The meeting was at the county jail. Bryce looked different. Older, thinner, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of designer clothes. He'd lost that confident smile that used to make me feel like we could conquer the world together. "Thanks for coming," he said when I sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either." We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear other conversations around us. Other inmates talking to their visitors. Normal people dealing with normal problems. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "Sorry for what exactly?" "For lying to you. For stealing from you. For—" He paused, looking down at his hands. "For never actually being your friend." That hit harder than I'd expected. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been running cons since college. Different schemes, different targets. When we reconnected, I saw an opportunity. Someone who trusted me completely, had some money saved up, wouldn't ask too many questions." He looked up at me. "I played the friendship card because I knew it would work on you." The honesty was brutal, but also somehow relieving. At least now I knew where I stood. "The stuff we talked about as kids," I said. "Our plans, our dreams. Was any of that real?" "For you, yeah. For me," he shrugged. "I was always looking for angles, even then." I sat back in my chair, trying to process 15 years of friendship being rewritten as 15 years of manipulation. "Do you regret any of it?" "I regret getting caught," he said. "I regret the legal consequences. I regret that my life is basically over now." He paused. "Do I regret hurting you? Honestly? I don't know. I've been lying for so long, I'm not sure I know what genuine regret feels like anymore." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "What happens now?" I asked. "I serve my time. Maybe I get out in 3 years if I behave myself. Then I try to figure out how to live like a normal person for the first time in my adult life." I stood up about to leave. For what it's worth, I hope you figure it out.
Why?
Because the alternative is you spending the rest of your life hurting people, and I don't want to believe anyone's that far gone. He nodded. Thanks, I mean it. I walked out of that jail feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd forgiven him, I'm not sure I ever will completely, but because I finally understood what had happened to me. It wasn't personal. I wasn't uniquely stupid or gullible. I was just someone who wanted to believe in friendship and got targeted by someone who made a living exploiting that desire. These days, I'm more careful about trust. Not paranoid, just careful. I ask more questions, I verify things independently, and I don't let childhood nostalgia override common sense. I'm also not afraid to dream big anymore. The difference is that now I build my dreams on facts instead of faith. I save money based on real budgets, not fantasy projections. I make plans based on what I can control, not what other people promise me. Last month, I got promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. It's not CEO of a revolutionary startup, but it's real progress earned through real work. My paycheck went up, my responsibilities increased, and nobody can take it away from me because I earned it myself. I still think about those childhood dreams sometimes. The treehouse conversations, the magazine cutouts of sports cars and mansions, the absolute certainty that we were destined for something bigger than our small town. Maybe we were. Maybe I still am. But now I know the difference between dreaming and scheming, between hoping and being naive, between trusting someone and handing them the keys to your entire life. Trust without proof isn't faith. It's just blind hope. And blind hope, I learned the hard way, is how good people get hurt by people who stopped being good a long time ago. I'm okay with taking longer to build something real, because when I finally do make it out of this town, it'll be on my own terms, with my own work, and with people who've earned the right to be there with me. That's worth more than any amount of stolen money could ever be. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.